I still clearly remember that evening, when the door opened after 3 days of disappearance. My husband stepped in with a smudge of red lipstick halfway on his collar, and a crooked smile, as if he'd just escaped a nightmare I wasn't allowed to know about. He said he was just out on business, but his eyes trembled like a child lying. I stayed silent, yet my heart pounded so hard, it sounded like lashes from a whip. That night, I secretly opened the phone he thought I'd never touch, and from that moment, my 40 years of marriage began to crack, piece by piece. My name is Linda, 62 years old, living in a quiet town in the suburbs of Seattle. This is my own true story. I am a retired elementary school teacher, and my husband Mark is 65 this year, formerly a technician at an electric utility company. We have 2 grown children, each with their own families, and they rarely visit except for major holidays. From the outside, our life always made the neighbors envious. A small house, a garden blooming regularly, an old couple living peacefully like a pair of sparrows at the end of the season. But the truth was more fragile than the morning mist. Before getting into the main issue, let me know where you're watching this story from and what time it is, so I can see how far this true story has spread. Over the past 2 years or so, Mark changed. He became more secretive, startled easily whenever I entered the room, and especially started taking his phone with him, even into the bathroom, something he never did before. Every time I asked, he just smiled and said, "These days, everyone does that." I didn't press him, because at our age, I thought men sometimes needed their own space, as long as they still treated me kindly. But the abnormalities didn't stop there. The morning before Mark disappeared, he left the house earlier than usual. I still remember the engine revving louder than normal, as if he were rushing to escape something. "Urgent business at the old company," he said when I asked. His voice sounded dry and strained. I stood on the porch watching his figure disappear down the hill, a strange premonition rising in my chest, like salt falling into boiling water, small, but impossible to ignore. By evening, Mark hadn't come home. I called. He didn't answer. I texted. No reply. I thought he might have stopped at a bar with old friends, but when the clock struck 2 in the morning, the house felt larger than ever, the wind brushing against the windows sounding like sighs, and I knew something was very wrong. On the second day, I reported it to the police. They said it wasn't enough time to open a missing person case without signs of danger. I waited without eating, without sleeping, just sitting and staring at the empty chair across the dining table. Every time a car passed outside, my heart leaped with hope, then sank again. By the third day, I was preparing for the worst, but that evening, at exactly 9:17, the door opened. Mark stepped in, clothes wrinkled, hair disheveled, face pale. He forced a smile. "I'm sorry. I went to meet an old friend, and things got more complicated than I thought." I looked at him and saw the smeared red lipstick on his collar. Bold, fresh, unmistakable. What panicked me wasn't the lipstick stain. It was that he didn't even bother to hide it, as if he thought I wouldn't notice, or worse, as if he no longer cared if I did. "Why is your shirt dirty like that?" I asked, my voice so calm it even surprised me. Mark flinched for a moment, then answered too quickly. "Oh, probably from some kids at the restaurant." I stayed silent. He stayed silent too. The silence between us was so thick that if someone dropped a needle in the air, you'd hear it fall. That night he slept strangely soundly, while I tossed and turned endlessly, haunted by unanswered questions. Where had he been for 3 days? With whom? And that lipstick? Whose was it? Around 3 in the morning, I quietly slipped out of bed. Mark was snoring steadily, his phone on the nightstand, something he never would have done before. As if he were too exhausted to be cautious, I picked up the phone. My hands trembled like I was holding a small bird that could break at any moment. The password. When had he changed it? I tried his birthday. Wrong. Our wedding date. Wrong. Our older daughter's birthday. Wrong. My heart raced. I tried a sequence he often used for bank accounts, simple enough, private enough, and it opened. The screen lit up, casting a cold light on my face that made me shiver. I scrolled through messages, calls, emails. Most were empty, too empty to be real. But in a hidden folder one, he probably thought I'd never know how to find. I saw a message thread from someone unknown. Initials A, M. Just one line. You can't avoid me forever. The child can't wait any longer. I felt like someone had just yanked a heavy curtain away from my life. Which child? And why can't wait? I took a screenshot. My heart trembled with fear, anger, and a chilling cold. When I set the phone down, Mark shifted in his sleep, murmuring a strange name. A woman's name. I stood still, watching him sleep, and knew everything in these 40 years was about to change forever, and I would no longer let myself be buried in darkness for one more day. I had just discovered the first clue about a child he had hidden for 20 years. I woke up the next morning feeling like I'd just emerged from a heavy dream. Mark was already up early, standing in the kitchen brewing coffee as usual, but his movements were off, awkward, trying to act normal. But I could clearly see the tension in his hunched shoulders, in his tightly gripped stirring spoon. Perhaps he thought I didn't notice. Perhaps, over 40 years, he had grown too used to me being the forgiving one. But this time, I felt more awake than ever. Did you sleep well? I asked, my voice lighter than morning mist. He startled. Okay, I guess. You? I was a bit tired, I replied, making sure to hold his gaze long enough for him to sense the change in me. Mark avoided my eyes, something rare before. I sat down, observing every small detail, his nails bitten short from who knows when, a small scratch on his wrist, and the faint, strange perfume lingering on his pajamas. A sweet yet sharp scent, not one men wore, and certainly not anything I had in the house. I cautiously asked, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" Mark looked at me with weary eyes, as if struggling whether to confess some part of the truth. But just a second later he turned away and muttered, "No, nothing at all. I'm just dealing with a little trouble. I'll handle it myself." Handle it himself? Those words cut into my heart like thin shards of glass. I stayed silent, and that silence seemed to make him even more anxious. After breakfast, Mark said he had to go out for a bit. I nodded. But this time, I didn't let him go alone. As soon as he left, I grabbed my car keys, waited until he was a distance away, then quietly followed. I never thought at my age I could still tremble like when we first fell in love, only now. It wasn't excitement making me shake, but fear and anger intertwined. His car headed straight to an old neighborhood near downtown. The area had many cheap rental buildings, mostly for young people and seasonal workers. I parked a little farther away, watching him enter a third-floor apartment. He knocked, and then the door opened. A woman at least 20 years younger than me stood there, her hair tied high, wearing a loose, oversized shirt that couldn't hide her tired eyes, deep, like they held a whole night sky. She flinched slightly upon seeing Mark, but then opened the door wider, inviting him in with a familiar voice, too familiar. My heart nearly stopped. I gripped the steering wheel tightly to control the trembling. Who was she? And why did my husband walk into her home so comfortably, as if he'd done it dozens of times? Mark stayed inside for nearly an hour. I just sat in the car, counting every minute, every breath. Every small noise outside made my heart ache. When he came out, his face was tense. His steps hurried as if the meeting hadn't gone smoothly. I ducked down in my seat to avoid being seen, only sitting up once his car left the neighborhood. But I didn't go home. I needed more. I walked to that apartment door, hesitating before knocking lightly. After a long while, the woman opened it, still looking weary, her eyes full of suspicion upon seeing me. "Hello, can I help you?" she asked. I smiled, trying to be polite. "I just wanted to ask if you know the man who just visited. We're looking for an old acquaintance. I might have the wrong person." The woman looked at me for a few seconds, then replied, "I don't know him well. He just stopped by to drop off some papers." Papers? I didn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. But her eyes, evasive, restless, told me there was something much bigger she didn't want to reveal. I nodded thanks and turned away. But as I stepped down the stairs, I heard the door close quickly behind me, as if she feared I'd turn back and ask more. That afternoon, I checked Mark's phone again. The messages from A.M. were still there. I tried opening older parts of the conversation. Many messages had been deleted, but what remained was enough to chill my spine. "You have to tell her the truth. I can't raise it alone forever. 20 years is long enough, Mark. The girl doesn't need you, but she needs to know who you are. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I was seeing wrong. The girl? 20 years? My heart felt like someone was squeezing it hard. A terrifying thought flashed through my mind. Mark had a secret child. With someone. For 20 years. And I had no idea. I slumped into the chair, my whole body drained. I had gone through so many years with him. Winters without work, months when he was hospitalized, holidays with just the two of us because the kids were busy. I had been there through every failure, every drop of sweat, every small hope, yet he had hidden from me something so huge it could destroy this entire family. That evening, Mark came home late. I sat at the dining table, the yellow light casting over the growing emptiness between us. "What's wrong?" he asked, but without daring to look straight at me. I asked softly, as if casually. "Who is AM?" Mark froze. Just a few seconds, but enough to confirm all my suspicions. He breathed heavily, avoiding my eyes. "It's just old stuff, Linda. Nothing serious. I'll handle it." I looked at him for a long time, and for the first time in years, I no longer saw the man I had loved. I only saw someone clinging to his last lies, and I knew this was just the tip of the iceberg. But I would dig all the way to the bottom. I had confirmed the existence of a child Mark had kept secret for 20 years, but the mother's identity and the full truth behind it remained in the shadows. Are you still here, my audience? If you find this story interesting, please comment the number 1 or "I'm still here," okay? From the moment I read that final message from AM, that night, I knew I could no longer go back to being the gentle, trusting wife I once was. A door had opened, and even if a chasm lay behind it, I had to step through. The next morning, Mark left the house unusually early. I stood in the kitchen watching his figure fade out the window, my heart filled with a strange feeling, familiar yet distant, as if I had been living with a man wearing a mask for 20 years. As his car noise faded away, I sat at the table, opened my laptop, and for the first time in years, I actively investigated the husband I thought I knew so well. AM. 3 simple letters. But every time I typed them into the search bar, my heart tightened. I didn't find the name in contacts or emails, but deep in Mark's bank transactions, I discovered a series of regular transfers of $200 every month, stretching nearly 2 decades. The short note, "Maintenance support," sent chills down my spine. Men don't send money for 20 years to strangers. There was only one possibility I dared not voice. I continued reviewing his tax records, hands shaking so much I had to pause several times. Shady deductions, clumsily disguised notes, a repeating pattern like footprints of someone running while trying to erase them. But Mark hadn't erased enough. There was no doubt anymore he had been secretly providing for someone for nearly 20 years. And with the message, "The child can't wait any longer," the pieces started fitting together in a way that left me breathless. I had to know who the young woman in that apartment was, even if it meant staring straight into this pain. That afternoon, I returned to the building where Mark had visited. Standing before that door, I realized I was no longer the trembling woman facing suspicions. I rang the bell, not to confront but to observe. When the building manager appeared, I used the excuse of looking for a room for my grandchild to chat. She casually revealed something that nearly made me collapse. That apartment had been home to a mother and daughter for nearly 20 years. The mother's name was Anna, and they moved in when her daughter was still a newborn. 20 years. The same time frame as Mark's regular transfers. I heard my heartbeat slow, as if someone were choking it. I returned to the car, barely breathing, yet feeling terrifyingly clear-headed. A thought rang clear in my mind. I was no longer seeking the truth just for myself. I was seeking justice for a child who had never been acknowledged. That evening, while Mark was out, I searched for Anna on social media. Strangely, it only took a few minutes. The first post I saw was a graduation photo of a young woman, Anna's daughter, and the moment I saw that radiant smile, electricity shot down my spine. The girl had Mark's smile. Those eyes, that gaze, the way her lips curved when smiling, it was all a perfect copy of the man living under the same roof as me. No need for a DNA test. A wife's intuition was the clearest proof. I sat motionless before the screen. In the flickering light of the desk lamp, I saw a different Linda. Older, but stronger. I saw myself standing amid 20 years of deception. And amid 20 years of another woman's silence, Anna. She had raised a child alone, living in that small, run-down apartment, while Mark told me, we can't afford to travel, that we need to save for the future. What hurt me wasn't that he betrayed me, it was that he let those two live quietly in hardship, without status, without explanation. And he used my trust to shield himself. I scrolled down to older posts. One status from Anna a few months ago made my eyes sting. Thank you to whoever helped. But my girl deserves to know the truth. I can't hide it from her forever. Right below was a comment from the young woman. I don't need him. I just want to know why he never dared to show up. I closed the laptop, held my head, and for the first time in days, I cried. Not because I was heartbroken, but because of the pain of a child who had grown up with unanswered questions. And even more painfully, I had lived right beside the man who made her write those words. But as the tears fell onto the table, I realized what was growing inside me was no longer just hurt. It was a new resolve. Clear, cold as steel, determined. I whispered in the darkness, as if to myself, Linda, it's time you knew the whole truth. And when I stood up, wiping away the last tear, I knew the decision I was about to make would change all our lives. I would meet Anna, not to accuse Mark, but to listen to the 20 years that had been buried. Then one day I would make Mark face it, in a place he could no longer hide. I was preparing to contact Anna, to open the deepest part of the truth Mark had hidden for 20 years. That evening, when Mark stepped into the house, I was sitting on the porch where we used to sit through old summers, drinking coffee and watching sunsets blaze red over the neighbors' roofs. But today, the twilight seemed to cover everything in a thin layer of deceit. Mark looked at me, pausing slightly as if sensing something unusual. I smiled, a small smile so faint even I wasn't sure if it was real or just the last shell of my patience. Are you okay? He asked. I nodded. Yes, I'm just thinking about my life. Mark turned away immediately, as if those words made him uncomfortable. I watched his back as he walked, adjusting his collar, the same collar that once bore the red lipstick stain I could never forget. Just looking at it made my heart feel squeezed. But that pain no longer made me want to collapse. It had turned into something else. Icy clarity. That night, as Mark slept deeply, I lay beside him and looked at the man I had once loved passionately. I gazed at every wrinkle around his eyes, lines I thought were from time, but now saw as marks of years spent hiding lies. I remembered the times he said, I'm in a meeting, the evenings he came home late, the days he was unusually quiet. They all lined up like an army of truth, slowly advancing toward me. I lightly touched his hand, the hand that once held mine at our wedding. I used to think it was the safest place. Now it felt as foreign as a stranger's. 40 years together, so many sacrifices. I gave up teaching to care for his sick mother. I stood behind him when he was unemployed, paying bills with my modest pension. I loved him, with a love that asked for nothing but honesty. But it turned out, I was just the shadow helping him cover his biggest mistake. Thinking of that, my chest ached, but no more tears fell. I had cried enough. I whispered in the darkness. You took 20 years of truth from me. Now it's my turn. The next morning, I called our son. We rarely talked deeply, as each child was busy with their own life. When his voice came through the phone, I suddenly felt like I'd aged a long stretch in just days. Mom, are you okay? Your voice sounds strange. I started to say a few things, but stopped. No. I needed to understand everything before involving the kids. When it was all clear, Mark would face the family, not me. I'm fine, just a bit tired, I said. Take care of yourself. When I hung up, loneliness enveloped me. But not the kind that weakens you. It was the stillness before a storm, the kind that lets you hear fate's footsteps approaching. I drove to the park near Anna's building. I sat on the old wooden bench, hands clasped, taking a deep breath. I knew today would be a turning point. From the moment I approached Anna, nothing would stay safe. I sent a short message to the phone number I found in her public records. I'm Linda. I think we need to talk. About Mark. Just minutes later, my phone buzzed. Are you his wife? Anna's voice was low, cautious but not surprised. I replied. Yes. A long pause, thick enough to slice. Then Anna said, her voice steady. Good. I've been waiting for this day. My heart clenched. Waiting for this day? Those words held 20 years of another woman's endurance. We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop near the old apartment complex. When I walked in, I recognized Anna immediately. She wore a pale beige sweater, hair tied neatly back, face weary but eyes resilient in a way that chilled me. When I sat down, Anna looked at me for a long while, as if assessing what kind of wife I was, a blind one, or finally one deserving the truth. I didn't want to destroy your family, she began. But he owes my daughter an explanation. And he owes you too. Something in those words choked me. I took a deep breath and smiled sadly. We're both victims of the same man, Anna. Her eyes reddened, but no tears fell. But I knew he would never say it. Mark has always feared the truth. I looked straight at her, my voice calmer than I imagined. Then I'll be the one to bring that truth to light. Anna stared in shock. What are you going to do? I sipped my coffee, the bitterness spreading on my tongue but making me strangely clear-headed. I don't know if this is revenge or just ending the lies. But one thing I'm sure of, Mark has to face his child, and face me. Then I slowly continued, gazing into the distance. Our 40th anniversary is next month. The whole family will be there. I'll make him tell the truth. In front of everyone. Anna's eyes widened, shocked yet relieved, as if she'd finally found the ally she'd waited for so long. I stood to leave. As I passed the door, I paused and said, Thank you, the rest I'll handle. When I stepped out of the shop, cold wind hit my face, but no longer made me tremble. I felt like a woman who had just escaped decades of delusion, and in that new clarity, I knew my plan had begun, and Mark would never suspect what was coming. I had decided to expose the truth at our 40th anniversary party and started preparing the trap for Mark. Before diving into the exciting part of the story, take a moment to relax, drink some water, and come back, okay? Don't forget to comment. I'm still here to keep listening. Since meeting Anna, something switched on inside me. I no longer moved through the house like a wife trying to understand her husband. I moved like someone gathering evidence for a trial where the defendant didn't know he was about to stand. Mark still lived carefree, still sent secret texts, still tried to cover the dark patches of the past 20 years. But he didn't know I had seen everything, and his days of casually stepping over the truth were ending. Our 40th anniversary party would be the centerpiece. Our son, daughter, grandchildren, close friends all would be there. Mark always loved boasting to everyone that he was the model husband, the gentle father, the family pillar. I decided that would be the final stage for his facade. But to reveal the truth, I needed more than anger. I needed proof, a script, and Mark himself confessing in front of those he valued most. I wanted him unable to deny, unable to blame, unable to escape. I started by installing a small camera in Mark's home office. He often went in there every evening, locking the door to review retirement documents, but really to message Anna or transfer money. I knew he had a second phone, something I had vaguely suspected but never dug into. One evening while he showered, I quietly searched his desk drawer and found it an old flip phone he thought I'd never be curious about. I turned it on. The undeleted messages appeared like freshly sharpened knives. We need to talk again before she suspects. The girl wants to meet you, Mark. Stop avoiding. I can't cover for you forever. I didn't save the messages. I let the camera do it. The next evening, when Mark opened the phone, the camera captured every word he read, his tense expression, his trembling hands. I didn't need to catch him cheating. I needed everyone to see he had deceived us for 2 decades. The plan formed like a piece of music I was gradually perfecting note by note. I called Anna, saying I needed some information to confirm everything. She fell silent when I asked, "When is the girl's birthday?" She answered slowly, as if afraid I couldn't bear the truth. May 14th. The same as Mark's. I nearly dropped the phone. Same day, same month. Like a cruel joke, fate had deliberately etched into my life. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "Thank you. I needed that." Anna paused, then said, "If you want, I can bring her to the anniversary, but I need to be sure. You know the consequences." I closed my eyes. In the silence, I saw my reflection in the mirror, an older woman, but with eyes no longer afraid. I've borne the consequences for 20 years, Anna. Now it's his turn. That same evening, I began preparing the room for the party, the large living room, with the wall-mounted TV. From now until then, I would secretly gather enough evidence, edit it into a short video, not long, just the key pieces. Asterisk. A few clips of Mark texting on the secret phone. Asterisk. Images of transfers of $200 monthly for 19 years to A.M. Asterisk. Photos of Anna's daughter, especially her smile like Mark's. Asterisk. And finally, Mark's own confession. The last part would be hardest. Mark wouldn't easily admit fault, but I knew one thing. Liars always have a weak moment. I just needed to create the situation. I waited until the third night. When Mark returned from meeting Anna, I saw his weary eyes, hands gripping the wheel until white-knuckled. He entered without looking at me, just saying, "Linda, I'm really under a lot of pressure. Don't ask anything more." I stood in the kitchen, back turned, voice soft as if speaking to myself. "Are you hiding something from me, Mark?" I heard him freeze. His breathing changed. His answer fell like shattered glass. "I don't know where to start." The living room camera was already on. I led Mark in, set down 2 cups of tea. "Sit," I said, calm in a terrifying way. "We can talk." Beyond the lies, Mark looked at me so long I could see the fear in his eyes. And then, what I didn't expect happened. He sighed, trembling. "Linda, yes, I have a child. But I didn't mean to. It was a mistake from my younger days." Younger days? Mark was 45 at the time. I didn't retort. I just asked softly, "Why hide it from me for 20 years? Mark clutched his head, voice choking. "I was afraid of losing you." The camera recorded everything. I looked at him, calm as a frozen lake. "Yes, I'll let you lose me. But not now." The anniversary was approaching. With each passing day, I felt myself changing. I no longer trembled when Mark texted. No longer hurt when he came home late. I stood in the shadows, gathering evidence, editing clips, arranging pieces like setting up a chessboard. And on that board, Mark wasn't the player. He was the piece. The final piece that would be flipped over in front of everyone. I wrote invitations to family and friends. I ordered a large cake inscribed 40 years of truth. Mark thought it was just a celebratory phrase. He didn't know. It was a warning. The evening before the party, when Mark hugged me and said, "I love you because you've always been there for me," I just nodded slightly. Those words now rang hollow as an empty shell. In my heart echoed a clear, cold voice. "Tomorrow, Mark, you'll stand before everyone, and you'll tell the truth, whether you want to or not." All preparations were complete. The anniversary party was just 1 day away, and Mark was about to fall into a trap he couldn't escape. Our 40th anniversary arrived on a morning so peacefully unbelievable, pale blue sky, soft sunlight falling on the roof, wind gentle enough to rustle the decorative string lights. If it were a few months ago, perhaps my heart would have warmed. But today, every beautiful detail felt like ironic strokes on the canvas of the truth about to explode. Guests arrived in crowds from early afternoon. My son and daughter hugged me tightly, unaware my heart was beating differently under my dress. Neighbors, Mark's friends, grandchildren running around the living room. Everyone believed they were attending a peaceful celebration. No one knew they were about to witness an earthquake. Mark entered last. He wore a dark blue suit, striped tie, face radiating the confidence of a man always praised as the good husband, the model father. But when our eyes met, I saw beneath that polished exterior a small tremor, like dark water seeping from rock cracks. He knew. He sensed something. But he could no longer stop it. The wheel was turning. The party began with lively chatter and laughter. Mark recounted old memories with his familiar humor, but I saw flashes of tension in his eyes whenever I passed by. I sat quietly, listening to congratulations, feeling like I was at the funeral of something beautiful that once existed. When everyone's glasses were nearly empty, I stood. Conversations hushed. Loving eyes turned to me. Mark smiled, preparing for some gentle speech. But my voice rang out differently than in years past. "Thank you all for coming. 40 years of marriage is a long journey, and I think it's time we talked about the truth. I pressed the remote. The TV lit up, cold blue light filling the ceiling. First came footage of Mark holding the secret phone in his office. He read messages with a tense face, unaware the small camera I'd installed was capturing every movement. The room held its breath, then my voice narrated steady, unafraid. You can't avoid me forever. The child can't wait any longer. Mark jumped up immediately. Linda, turn it off. What are you doing? I didn't answer. No one did. Images of monthly $200 transfers for 19 years appeared. My son braced his hands on the table, face pale. My daughter let out a small cry and covered her mouth. I heard someone's glass drop onto the carpet. Mark tried rushing to the TV, but I'd unplugged the power cord from behind. The screen ran on backup battery. He pounded the frame, like a desperate man. I said calmly, each word heavy as stones falling to the floor. Do you have anything to explain, Mark? Or shall we continue? The next segment appeared. Photos of a graceful young woman, bright eyes, smile curving just like young Mark's. The room gasped in painful unison. My daughter turned to me, voice breaking. Mom. That girl. She looks so much like Dad. I nodded. That's Melody. 19 years old this year. Mark trembled violently. He gripped the chair arm until his knuckles whitened. I continued, voice not raised, but each sentence like underground water rising to shatter everything. Melody shares Mark's exact birthday. A silence stretched, suffocating. Then the video reached the end. Mark filmed in the living room days earlier, voice shaking. Yes, I have a child, but I don't know where to start. When that confession played, Mark collapsed into his chair. The room froze. A knock at the door sounded right then. Everyone turned, and when the door opened, Anna stepped in, Melody beside her. I heard Mark gasp, as if his soul had left his body. No, Linda. You brought them here? Anna advanced, cold but dignified. The girl wants to face the truth, Mark. So she came. Melody stood just steps from Mark. Her voice trembled but firm. Why did you abandon me? Why did you never dare look at me once? Mark crumpled. I had never seen him like this in 40 years. My son lunged forward. Dad betrayed Mom for 20 years? With another family? My daughter sobbed uncontrollably. The room drowned in chaos of anger, pain, and shock. And I stood still at the storm's center, but my heart lightened gradually. Not joy, not vindication. Just a boulder lifted from my chest after 20 years. Mark looked at me through tears. Linda, please, don't do this. I was wrong. I know. I interrupted, voice no longer hard but weary. You were just cowardly, just good at hiding, just afraid of the truth. I looked at him long. But you can't hide anymore. Mark broke into loud sobs. Tears from a man who seemed strong but was actually paralyzed by weakness. Melody turned away, shoulders shaking. Anna placed a hand on her. The room fell heavy, silent. And in that moment, I realized our lives had just split in two before the truth. And after, no way back. After the revelation night, the family shattered. Mark collapsed, and I began my own journey of healing. After that anniversary night, my once warm home became silent as an abandoned warehouse. No lights on, no talking, just cold wind slipping through door cracks, carrying the scent of roses from the garden, the roses Mark planted for me in our early years. Every time that fragrance wafted by, I no longer felt warmth. I felt regret. Regret for a life I had given with all my heart. Mark moved out the next morning. He didn't say much. Just left a note with a few scribbled lines. I'm sorry. I know I've destroyed everything. I folded the paper, put it in a drawer not to keep as a memory, but to remind myself that people sometimes ruin what they value most. I no longer hated him. I just felt sorry for him. Both my children were bewildered for weeks after. My daughter called every night, voice choked. Mom, are you okay? I can't believe Dad did that. I answered as gently as I could. I'm fine, honey. Really. The worst pain is over, and strangely, I meant it. I was okay, perhaps because I had seen the full truth. When darkness lingers too long and is finally torn open, the light, however blinding, helps us see the way forward. Anna called me the second week, her voice low, but less tense than our first meeting. "Thank you for that evening," she said. "I never wanted Mark to suffer. I just wanted my daughter to know she wasn't rejected, because she wasn't good enough." I closed my eyes. My heart tightened briefly. I remembered Melody, beautiful eyes filled with questions for 19 years. All I could say to Anna was, "She deserves the truth. And so do you." After a pause, Anna asked hesitantly, "Do you hate me?" I let out a soft laugh, the kind I didn't think I could still make. "No. You took nothing from me. You just passed through the life of a man I thought was mine alone." We fell silent. But it was the silence of two women who understood each other, needing no more words. A month passed. I began tending the garden again, pruning old rose branches, planting new rows of lavender that I always loved. I signed up for an art class, something I dreamed of but never did because Mark didn't like time-wasting things that don't make money. Now time was mine. Life was mine. I no longer had to explain to anyone. One evening, I stood on the porch watching the sunset streak like orange-purple ink. I heard light footsteps behind me, the rhythm I'd known for 40 years. Mark stood there, thinner, hair messy, eyes lacking their old confidence. "I'm sorry," he said, almost whispering. I turned, looking closely at his aged face. And what I felt wasn't hatred, just weariness after a long dream that had ended. "I don't need apologies anymore, Mark," I said. "What you did wasn't your worst mistake. The worst was thinking I wasn't strong enough to face the truth." Mark bowed his head, lips trembling. "I don't expect forgiveness. Just hope you live well." I nodded. "I'm doing that." Mark's eyes welled up. He turned away, and I knew that was the last time he'd stand on this porch as my husband. As he stepped down, wind brushed my shoulders, bringing a lightness, like releasing a long-held debt. Melody met me once, at a small coffee shop down the street. She wasn't sure about coming, but ultimately wanted to understand the woman her father had hidden all his life. "I want to say, I really respect you," Melody said, her eyes so like Mark's making me ache a little. I held her hand. "No one is at fault for being born. You owe no one an apology," Melody cried. Perhaps in 19 years, this was the first time an adult said that to her. When we hugged goodbye, I felt something profound. Truth doesn't destroy us. Silence does. Now, every morning, I brew myself a cup of tea, open the window to the newly tended garden. Sunlight dances on the leaves. Birds call to each other as if life is reminding me, "You've suffered enough, Linda. Now live for yourself." I know the hurt won't vanish in a day, but it's no longer a burden. It has become a milestone marking a new beginning, where I'm no longer a shadow of a marriage, but a woman standing firmly on her own feet. And sometimes, in quiet afternoons, I hear the wind glide over the roof like a whisper. "You did it, Linda." I smile. I believe it. I have stepped out of the darkness, and ahead lies a vast sky of things I never fully lived. Thank you all for staying until the end of the story. I know what Linda went through may not be everyone's story, but surely each of us has a pain, a secret, or a heartbreak that once made us think we couldn't go on. But the most important message this story wants to convey is that truth always has its value. Though it hurts, though it brings loss, only by facing the truth can we reclaim ourselves, heal, and move forward stronger. If you're going through something difficult, a crumbling marriage, a betrayal, or simply feeling alone in this vast life, remember, you're not alone. Every small step toward truth, toward peace, is worth cherishing. If today's story touched your heart, please leave a comment below. Share your thoughts, experiences, or just a simple hello so I know you're still here, still listening. And if you think someone, a friend, family member, or colleague in the United States needs to hear this story, don't hesitate to send them the video. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next emotional stories. Every like, comment, or share helps the channel spread meaningful lessons to the senior community in the United States. Thank you all so much. See you in the next stories where we heal together, grow strong together, and continue living the best days of our lives.